Hey everyone, welcome back to VR Roundtable. This is episode 54. This is Steve. I'm going to be the host this week, and I am joined by Gary and Chris. Chris, we missed you last week. What you been up to?
Yeah, I was at a wedding in Maine last weekend, so I had to go back home. But it was my cousin's wedding, so it was pretty cool. But yeah, I'm back now.
Oh, we're glad to have you back. And Gary, what's like? I can't talk. How's it going on your side of the pond?
Oh, it's good over here. It's usual. Very little to say other than everything's normal. You know, we're just carrying on, plodding along. Everything's ticking over nicely over here.
Yeah, for over here, it's kind of like, I guess it's different for students, but, for people just working, again, that long trot after college to retirement, that long 40-year run, we're kind of in between all the holidays now. So it's just like really nothing until late November, and it's just full work weeks, unless you got some vacation scheduled. It's just kind of a trotting period where everyone's busy. So or at least I am. Maybe I'm just saying that because I'm really busy. But anyways, as usual, we have a lot of news stories this time. There's been a lot going on, and then afterwards we're going to try to get to some games. There's been a few game releases that we want to talk about too. So let's hop right in it. And our first really story to cover, and we touched on it I think 2 episodes ago, in relation to a video showing the Pimax 8K accessories, and we really didn't get too much into the headset and the whole implications of it, and for good reason, because a lot of details were still coming out. And I know we got some comments both on YouTube or on the subreddit post where a lot of people had said, you guys didn't really dig deep into it, and we never in that moment had intended to. Since then, the Pimax has done a Kickstarter, and I forgot to check it before we went online, but will go in about an hour or so, and now they're 3-4 times over. I think they're approaching 1 million last time I looked at it. So by all accounts, the headset has done well. So I'm gonna send it over to Gary. What are your thoughts on the Pimax as a whole?
Yeah, it looks interesting. When I first saw all of these reports, basically a lot of what I've been watching this week, it's to do with Tested. They had a hands-on with the Pimax, and they've given a few reports on it, and they also spoke about on their podcast as well. So I mean, this isn't a headset that I really want to jump into at the moment with sort of risking it on a Kickstarter or anything like that. But I'm very interested to see how this progresses through. The fact that it's got all this funding is encouraging, obviously, for the company themselves, but also it shows a level of enthusiasm for this kind of technology, the extra resolution, the wider field of view. Now, it was a little bit confusing with this when this was announced. Really, a lot of people were talking about how there was a 5K, an 8K, and then an 8KX. So there was a little bit of confusion what all these models meant, and they went into this a little bit on the Tested video. I mean, we could talk about that a little bit later, but I want to just briefly mention this Tested video because I thought it was really interesting and really quite in depth. They had an interview with the one of the guys at Pimax, and the Tested guys even said either on Twitter or on Reddit, they mentioned how there was a little bit of a language barrier. So this guy's English was okay, and they were sort of communicating with him doing this interview, and that was all fine. In some ways, I honestly wish if this had been done with sort of a dedicated translator. Now, the guy sitting next to this person from Pimax, I assume he was sort of a backup translator in case they got into trouble. But you can tell that there were some difficulties in this interview as they were going through. There was still a lot of interesting features that they were talking about, and I liked it. But overall, what did you guys think of the interview overall that Tested did with Pimax?
I think it was really good, and it's probably in terms of the tested projections episode, it was the one I was looking forward to the most. Like, it had a lot of hype, and I know a lot of people on Reddit were saying, oh, I look forward to it, and then it got delayed. I guess everyone was expecting it sooner, and then the tested guy said, I believe it was Norm, he actually posted on Reddit and said that we're going to hold it out till Tuesday, which was the day before or the day of the Kickstarter. I can't remember. So they kind of held it, and you know, that caused a whole series of speculation. So it's probably one of the most looked forward to episode of that for them, and I thought it was pretty good. I watched it one take, beginning to end, and I thought they did a fair job trying to get to it, and that's one of the things that makes them so popular and well respected within our very small VR community, is that they're not afraid to get to the nitty gritty and you know, kind of not approach something from a marketing or a PR type interview, but rather get to the details that they know their consumers of their content want to get to. So I thought they did a fantastic job. Obviously, with 30 minutes and the limited language barrier, they weren't able to, you know, drill down through every single nut and bolt, which I think we all would have appreciated that too. But overall, I think they did a good job.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is the thing with tested. You know, I've said it a few times that Norm asks the questions that you want to ask. If you were in front of these people, he sort of, for some reason, I don't know what it is. Sometimes it's almost like when I'm watching one of their videos, it will be like, well, ask about this, and Norm will immediately say that, or Jeremy. You know, they're both very, very good, and they're both enthusiastic about VR.
Yeah,
Chris,
yeah.
what do you think?
I didn't watch the interview portion just because, like, I'm really busy, but I watched like all their impressions. I don't know. I heard a lot of people in the comments saying like they just couldn't watch the interviews, so I just figured like it was like incomprehensible, but I guess it isn't, so I'll have to go back and check that out. But either way, I think the first impressions kind of said a lot about what the product is and like what its shortcomings are and stuff. Maybe we could start drilling into some of that.
Yeah, I'm still kind of iffy on the Kickstarter, so I did not back it, and I don't know if either of you guys did, but and it has nothing to do with this Pimax AK itself. It's not so much a trust issue. It's just something held me back from actually doing the Kickstarter. But if I could walk into a store and buy one of these, I would be very, very, very tempted. Now, that's not to say that there aren't some things that I think are maybe a little wonky, and maybe some things that I feel they have to sort out. So I made a couple of bullet points. And again, we're probably not going to be able to touch on every element of this. I mean, it could take up the whole show itself. So one of the big points, though, from Tested's projections episode was that the 200 degree field of view, it kind of stretched on the edges. And I know we had talked in the past when talking about higher field of view, and when we talked about the Pimax initially, we had kind of said that what we had read was that all of this would work natively with VR. Like, 200 field of view should be no problem. And with this headset, I kind of got some more details and learned a little bit. And what really happens is, in OpenVR, the headset makes a call to the software and says, okay, I am X headset, my resolution is this, my field of view is this, and OpenVR will translate that just fine. So this sets you up for having multiple headsets on the platform that can have different attributes about them, and the game should work natively. The problem here with 200 field of view, it goes back to the way the geometry is drawn, and mathematically the limit is 180 degrees field of view. And I don't think we know completely what's happening here, how they're getting that last stretch. And it seems like there's more of a stretch than just those 20 degrees. Chris, I'll send it back to you just on the 200 field of view. You are in game development and school and everything. Do you understand the 180 degree limitation and the effect that it has on the geometry, and why 200 may not ever be supported, at least with it from a singular standpoint, rather instead of multi-projection?
Yeah, I think it just has to do with you get diminishing returns at some point, because if you're drawing 180 degree field of view, the edges are going to be super stretched out. That's just like when I had 3 monitors playing Minecraft and the sides were like ridiculously stretched out, like a block took up the whole screen type thing. I'm kind of surprised that OpenVR doesn't have the ability to have like 4 cameras, like have 2 over here, 2 here. Maybe that's something they can add. I would think that that's something that could be added into the OpenVR end of things, and it wouldn't have to be Pimax's job, hopefully. Because like if that happened, then everyone would probably be able to play everything. But that's just kind of weird that, I don't know. I feel like they could talk with Valve and see what they could do there, since they are partners with Valve and stuff.
Yeah, I think they could do that, you know, because like you were saying, Chris, just then, you know, I've got a 3 monitor setup as well, and whenever you play a game that's stretched over those monitors, the central monitor is fine, you know, that's how you'd expect it, and then the side monitors are stretched out in that way that this presumably works on that last sort of 10% of the screen either side. Now, they did mention in this interview as well that they're using a sort of separate their own bespoke driver in order to stretch that image out, just to fill out that periphery, which I think is okay, as long as it doesn't warp it too much during normal gameplay. You know, the edges of your vision, if that's slightly warped, I don't think that would make a huge amount of difference. You know, we've yet to try this stuff, so who knows?
Yep. Kind of the next bullet point, or the next major bullet point, is that, okay, this is called the 8K, and a lot of people have issues with that because it's not 8K. There's nothing 8K about it. And what Pimax has done with their marketing, they said, okay, we have 2 4K screens. 4K plus 4K is 8K. They're specifically referring to the horizontal resolution. And if you take it towards a sort of what we've done up until VR in terms of a monitor's resolution, 8K would be roughly 4 times the resolution of 4K. But this is not what's happening here. I'm kind of torn. Like I want things to be specified the way they really are, but at the same time, VR is such a different beast. I would be very open to a different formatting of how we refer to resolutions. You know, kind of just get away from the K element altogether. We just say horizontal and then throw out the number. Either way, it's not truly 8K in the monitor sense. But more importantly here, and this is what grabbed more attention for me, is that the 8K will not accept a 4K input per eye. It's actually going to receive roughly a 1440p input, and then internally it will upscale it for the 4K panels. And Pimax's reason for that is that we really don't have the graphical hardware, even in most cases, unless you have a 1080 Ti, to drive dual 4K resolution. Now, I kind of think that's hogwash. I get that we're not going to run raw data at 2.0 super sampling at 4K per eye, but a simpler game like maybe I don't know, Minecraft, something that isn't so taxing, could probably run natively. And the fact that they are kind of forcing you. Now, some of the other arguments are the bandwidth of HDMI, that maybe they feel that it's kind of pushing too far up the limit on what can be transferred down a HDMI cable. So they have an 8KX model, and the 8KX model will come out a few months after. I think they're shooting for April as of now. Maybe it was May. But this 8KX model, it's kind of like a pro model. It will support native 4K input per eye, but will come with a dual DisplayPort input. And I guess they feel that is absolutely what's needed to have the bandwidth per cable. Gary, did you track all of that? And what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, it's really interesting and also very confusing for a lot of people out there, a lot of consumers that are looking to jump into this Kickstarter. I honestly think, you know, resolution is confusing anyway because of the names that they give to this stuff. We started off, you know, we have 480p, we have 720p, and then we go up to sort of 1080p, which is the HD. So then they started 1080p. 1080 refers to the vertical pixel count. So when people started originally to talk about 4K, you would immediately think that would lead to 4,000 vertical pixels, but it didn't. They translated that to the width of the screen to be roughly 4,000 horizontal pixels, because then it would translate to approximately, you know, 4 times HD. I think it would be better to have some kind of reboot on all this resolution. It's not really 4K or 8K. It's 4 times. It's 4 times the previous standard resolution. 8K is 4 times 4K. So, you know, that makes perfect sense. And there's a lot of confusion with that. But also with this now, this latest Kickstarter, they've got a headset which is at a 5K, the Pimax 5K, which is a 1440p screen. 2 times 1440p screens, and that will run through a single cable, which will then, you know, it can the PC will push out that resolution and it will display natively in the HMD at that resolution. But then they also do this 8K headset, which is a 2160p, 2 times 2160, 4K screens, which also runs through a single cable, but it upscales. So it upscales this 1440p. Now, this is my understanding of this. What they then did is 8KX, which will run 8K to 4K screens natively at 4K. So that's the differences in all of this stuff. And it is confusing for the consumer, first of all, on a resolution level, but also on the different models that they've got out there. And also the fact that they're going against what is traditionally known as 8K, and this kind of stuff. So, you know, you really need to dive into all this resolution stuff to understand what you're getting. But it's interesting, they've got all these models to fulfill all these different needs. And yeah, that's my understanding. If I've made any mistakes on what I've just mentioned there, that's let me know. I think
don't worry, we'll be corrected.
Yeah.
That's the internet is good at that. We'll get it in the comments, the first one we get. So I agree. It is a lot of it's if you're an enthusiast, which a lot of people I think that are going to be in the market for a Pimax 8K, you're tracking this stuff. You're reading Reddit every day. You're going to Upload or Road to VR. Like, you're in the know. And I think if you're an enthusiast, like, that's not too difficult. But if you're not, like, you know, if you're the type of consumer that just walk into a Microsoft store or something, this product really isn't for you. And yeah, it's confusing as hell for the average Joe. And I don't think that's who they're marketing this to. I don't necessarily believe that we'll find this in a store. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the Pimax 2K, maybe it was available in the store and I just never saw it. But I don't think so. Chris, yeah. What's your take on all this?
It's very confusing, and I was just going to bring up their brain warp thing they're talking about, and it says it renders a 4K image in each eye, and it goes from one eye to the other, so it essentially makes a 4K image, and it says that's on the Pimax 8K, which goes against what they said, where that it's only at 1440p, because this says it's at 4K, just one eye at a time. It's kind of like the 3D effect where it like does one eye then the other eye. So like I'm super confused.
Yeah, I think the 8K, it does have 2 4K panels, but because it's only got the single cable, it's upscaling 1440p to those panels. And maybe it can change the way it renders that to alternate between the eyes to still cope with the single cable, you know, the bandwidth of a single HDMI cable. Maybe I don't know.
Yeah, I have a 4K panel, and like 4K 60 frames a second right now is at like the high end of the DisplayPort 1.1 I think I have, or whatever. But there's the new standard that's only in like the 1080 Ti. So like that's the other kind of iffy thing about this for me, is like if I got the 8KX, I'm not positive it would work. Like, you know, they're hoping it would work, but they don't have proof that it would work. Which is weird.
In the tested interview, they are saying that you need a 1080 Ti if you want to drive the 8KX at native 4K per eye resolution. So they are saying that. Now, they did make it sound like it was mostly just for the horsepower element, and they really didn't delve into because you need the correct DisplayPort protocol. But they are at least saying, hey, if you want the 8KX, plan on having a 1080 Ti.
There was something on the Kickstarter as well that I noticed when I went down the Kickstarter page. They did say when they were talking about all the amount you could contribute and then the rewards you get from there, they did say that the 8KX to run natively would need a 1080 Ti, but then they put in brackets, I believe that they said possibly 1080 Ti's SLI, but they're still doing the work on that to work that out. so that brings up a few questions. First of all, it's difficult to really want to go in for that reward if you know you're going to need two 1080 Ti's, but also the SLI element's interesting to me, because this is something we've heard from the beginning about VR. It's very difficult to get VR working effectively with SLI graphics cards. So I just wonder how they'd cope with that. Presumably that's part of their driver as well. I don't know.
Yeah, well, it's weird because you'd think they could get a functional prototype of at least it working on a 1080 Ti, and I think the 1080 Ti, or at least the Titan X, has all of this new DisplayPort cable on it. So theoretically, you can plug in two 4K monitors at 120 frames a second and they'll work fine. So I think like the theoretical thing is it would work, but the issue is they don't have a prototype that shows it works, which kind of feels like not good, because that's like almost against Kickstarter terms of service. Like you need to have a functional prototype of what you're selling, you know? So it's, I don't know. I would never go for the 8KX just because I need to see it working. Like, I don't know. That's really weird for me.
The only other thing I'll say is a lot of emphasis with the marketing around this product is on resolution. And we've talked about the 8K and how it's confusing, but I think a lot of people who maybe don't really follow resolution as it applies to a VR headset and what it relates to the field of view may back this and are expecting a massive resolution improvement. And I'll have to preface this by saying, no, I've not tried a Pimax 8K. However, mathematically, what we have to consider is that even though, so a Vive and the Rift are a 2160 by 1200 resolution across both eyes, 1080 by 1200 per eye. The resolution sent to the 8K at 1440 and the native resolution at 2160 is a much higher resolution than the native resolution of a Vive and Rift, and of course the PlayStation VR. However, the much wider field of view, part of that resolution increase is going to be spread out across that much wider field of view. So when you do the math and back it down on what they call like pixels per degree or whatever, there's lots of ways of stating that. What you're going to have is you're going to have a resolution improvement, and I firmly believe that, but it's not going to be a 4K or 4-time improvement. It's not going to be this just unbelievably massive jump. And Norm stated that in the projections episode. He said, I'm still able to see some screen door effect. Yes, it's better, but screen door is still there. So this isn't the magic bullet that completely eliminates screen door. And I did want to touch on that point because I think it's an important element in something that's branded 8K.
Yeah, I agree. And on that segment as well, Norm was talking about how they tried big screen as well in this headset. And he did say, you know, when he was going into various websites, you know, just scrolling through to see the text on these websites, he did say this did present a clearer image on the text, and it's workable to use this as like a virtual desktop kind of HMD. But yeah, I don't think you're going to notice from what they're saying and how they're describing this, it doesn't seem like you're going to notice a huge increase in resolution. But you know, if it's an improvement, then that's great. And it's not a hugely expensive headset. If they do get this thing out there and people do end up with them and it works as well as this prototype that tested tried, then I think people will be very pleased with it.
Yep. And I'll also say in the same episode, they said the controllers, at least the version they tried, the controllers were pretty much crap and to get some Vive ones to use with it. So hopefully, you know, Knuckles isn't too far out. Maybe you just use the Knuckles instead. So I think we've put a lot into the Pimax 8K. Does Chris or Gary, do you have anything else you want to add on that?
Yeah, I think we should all like say whether we would consider it or not and like what reasons for it. Because like, the thing with us is we all have the HTC Vive already, and they have packages that are just selling the headset by itself. And they're like, you can use the HTC controllers. They'll just sync right up with it and like basically replace the Vive headset with this. So
that's a good point. And I focused on that in one of the threads. I was really badgering people and people were probably getting tired of it, but I was very curious as how how the Vive wands would talk to this headset, and I think they made that clarity in the projections episode. And I know Steam VR is an open platform that you can make products, but I thought it was interesting that I guess apparently Valve controls the radios enough that you can mix and match controllers, which I think is fantastic. And I wouldn't have assumed that. I would have assumed that if you wanted to use your Vive wands with the Pimax headset, that maybe you needed a dongle or something. But apparently that's not the case. I was wrong. I'm happy to eat crow on that, because I think it's better for the consumer that controllers may be, as it relates to open VR and anything Valve is related to, they may be just grab and go and completely headset agnostic, even though the controllers are communicating to the headset. So I thought that was wonderful. With your question in mind, Chris, I am interested. I did mention that I did not back the Kickstarter, and that's just because I've never done Kickstarter before, so I'm not completely comfortable. But if I could walk to a retailer today or go to Amazon and buy one for the $450 or whatever, I'd probably do it, especially because I think I could at least get 200 or so out of just selling my Vive HMD. And keeping the lighthouses and keeping the controllers. Yeah, I think I would do this. And if they're ever available on Amazon, I don't know if the original Pimax is, I probably will do a hard look at that, especially considering, and we have a small blurb on it a little bit later, is that the LG has resurfaced with no improvements, and we don't know when this thing's coming. So Pimax 8K may be our best bet at a next-gen headset for quite a while.
Yeah. So I'm guessing you would go for the 8K, or would you think the 8KX, or would you do the 5K? Because like, it seems like the 8K is probably the best kind of middle of the road thing to get without going crazy, right?
Well, I have a 1080 Ti, so yeah, I'd probably look at the 8KX.
Okay.
Just because why would I limit myself? Just a couple of display port cables and I'm good to go, right? Now, I think this also, like, if you're going to talk about using the 8K, you got to really, for the time being, the real foreseeable time being, give up the concepts of wireless. Like, I don't see TP-Cast coming in for a Pimax version anytime soon.
That's true. Yeah. Gary, what do you think? Would you get an 8K, 8KX, or 5K?
I'd probably go for the 8K if I was going to jump into this. I think just the upscaling, just to reduce the screen door effect, even if you get the upscaling, then that's great. I'd probably go for that. But yeah, I don't know. This headset, it's like Steve, I've not jumped into that. I've not backed the Kickstarter or anything like that. But if I could go into a store and see it on the shelf, maybe I'd just get the headset itself and use it with the rest of the Vive setup. That's a possibility. What I would wonder as well, I want to get to the point where we're not getting bigger HMDs. We're sort of reducing the size and the form factor. And this looks huge. This is part of my concern about it. Although they've said that it's lighter than the HTC Vive, which is encouraging. I worry about the overall form factor of this thing. And I wonder if we'll ever get to a point where the form factor can be reduced, but we'll still get a wider field of view based on something where they can do some kind of like curved OLED screens and use some kind of algorithm to warp that correctly within your view. I don't know if we'll get there in order to reduce the form factor. That's the big thing for me.
Well, it looks like what is in Ready Player One, so obviously we're going to get there. In the trailer, yeah. it was pretty curved and wide field of view, so I think we'll get there. I mean, if Spielberg can do it, Pimax can.
Yeah, yeah, I'm probably, I don't know, like the cool thing about the 5K is it's only $399, but I guess it'd make sense to get the 8K for $499 if you're going to go for that. I don't know. That's a good point. I never thought of just selling my Vive headset separately. So
yeah, because there would be, you would have all the benefits of Lighthouse. That's the reason to have a Vive, right? Because otherwise the Rift is unless you got you wear glasses and you can't fit in the Rift. Like the big Vive advantage is the field of view, the Steam VR tracking, the Lighthouse tracking, like all of that is, as far as I can tell, superseded by the Pimax. So you get all the advantages of the Vive and these improvements. It seems to be the way to go.
Yeah, I don't know. That's super interesting. Like, I don't know, I feel like if one of you guys jumped on board, or like we all decided it was worth it, I don't know. I need some peer pressure, because right now I'm on the fence just because of all the kind of contradicting things about the 8K, and I don't know. But yeah, the field of view looks great, and like even their screen door effect comparison looks kind of compelling. So I'm considering it.
Yep. Okay, let's move on. I'm sure we're going to talk about the Pimax a lot more in the future. The next story I have is Microsoft has announced a VR event for October 3rd. Now, October 17th is the day where the I guess the Windows 10 update, creators update, or whatever they call it, is slated to launch, and it's also when we're expected to get these mixed reality headsets really available to us. So I'm assuming, there's no details really giving, but I'm assuming that this event is really for them to get up on stage and say, okay, here's our mixed reality headset, and here's our store, and here's the games that you're going to be able to buy from the Windows Store on launch on the 17th after the update. So it makes sense, and it's really not much to say other than they've announced an event. But I guess it's good to say, because we've talked over several weeks, and the slow trickle of mixed reality news that comes out from them. What's their storefront going to look like? How's all this going to work for the consumer? We've seen the hardware. We know they're out there for developers or for people that just want to get one. But what's it like for the consumer? How are they going to use this thing, at least until the Steam integration update is out? So Gary, what do you think? Are you going to watch this event, or are you just going to read the cliff notes the following morning?
I'll probably be reading the notes afterwards, to be honest. This one, it's interesting. I mean, like you say, I think they're going to just basically go through the fact, make a big deal of the fact that all of these things are launching, the Windows update, and all of these HMDs are going to be launching October 17th. So it all makes sense that they're doing this. They're obviously focusing on these mixed reality headsets that they've got. Now, HoloLens still comes under the overall bracket of Windows mixed reality, I believe, as well. So I'm wondering if we'll receive any kind of news or updates on what they're doing with HoloLens. To me, that's probably something that's still up in the air, and something that I'd look out for, that I'm quite interested in. But this is also coming, I believe because there's a Google event, isn't there, at the beginning of October. I don't know the exact date for that. It might be October the 4th or 5th, something around there. So there's a Google event which they're going through, presumably some further things about virtual reality, their Daydream stuff as well. So I'd like to hear some stuff from them as well. But yeah, this seems like an event really to promote the fact that they're launching these HMDs.
Yeah, what if they announce that Steam VR is going to be supported day one, and then everyone's like, whoa, I could have guessed that could happen anyway.
Well, it should do, shouldn't it, really? But yeah, we did. I don't know, because we did get that report that they were going to do it, and then they backtracked on it. It wouldn't be day one, so who knows?
Yeah.
Yep. Moving on. So I know we've talked about several times, there's been a lot of drama around HTC as a company and their finances. And there have been some speculation and some rumors for a while that HTC was going to spin off their cell phone or their smartphone division, or maybe even just sell as a whole. And then more recently, a lot of speculation that Google would be buying them. And earlier this week, HTC announced a halt of all of their trading, which is, I guess, standard fare if you were about to announce an acquisition or something of that. So it really ratcheted up the thought that Google would be buying HTC. And we ended up finding out, I believe, the next day that there would be no acquisition. And this I find really interesting. Is that basically Google's or Alphabet is gonna flow $1.1 billion into HTC, and ultimately all they're buying is some rights to some technology, rights to the design group, and some staff is going to be moving over to be Google/Alphabet employees. And I really thought that was weird. Is like, how do you move staff over? It's like they're not NFL players that are being traded to another team. Like, you would think that there would have to be some sort of employment change. So maybe the team, the employees that are going to be working for Google are still working for HTC and just being kind of subcontracted. So I just thought that was a very peculiar phrasing around it, and made it sound like it was a professional sports trade than anything. But Chris, what do you think about all this? And do you think it'll save HTC? Do you think this is going to help them? Obviously, $1.1 billion will help anybody, but that's if they can't stop the overall hemorrhaging, they'll burn through that 1.1 million or billion.
Yeah, I mean, it's only for the smartphone side of the business, so VR is not really involved, which is an interesting move. I think Google just wants to increase their hardware capabilities and like pushing out products fast, because, you know, HTC's always been good at that. Like, they're always good at just getting an assembly line up and running. And since Google's doing their Pixel line of phones, they probably wanted that similar thing. But yeah, I don't know. It's not what I expected. You know, I expected Google to either buy them out completely, or that would just be a rumor. So this is kind of a weird middle ground that's, I don't know. It's interesting, but I don't think it'll really affect the VR business in any way. But yeah, I guess the smartphone side of things, it'll help Google be more competitive in that market.
Yeah, I get that it helps Google. I just, what I don't, other than the 1.1 billion, I don't see how it necessarily helps HTC. Like, you know, are they going to continue with their branded phones that aren't, you know, is not the Google Pixel? And is that going to somehow help them sell that phone better? Like, and that's the whole part of it that seems weird. The VR business seems to be doing good. I think it has a future, but the whole, you know, let's get 1.1 billion, just almost seems like Google is just buying some rights and that's it.
I guess.
Gary, what do you think? Go ahead, Chris. Sorry.
Okay. I don't know. I guess the question is, like, is this deal essentially meaning like HTC is not really going to make smartphones anymore? Like, they're going to do that with Google now? And if that's the case, does that mean HTC is going to turn into a more VR focused company? I don't know.
Yeah, well, I did see something where they said that they are actually, HTC are working on their next phone as well. So I think they are still going to be doing their phone, but apparently this, because some HTC employees from the R&D team went over to Google to help produce the Pixel phone. And part of this 1.1 billion is sort of acquiring them, changing them over to Googlers, so that they'll be Google employees from HTC, but also taking extra from them as well, part of their workforce over to Google. So they're paying 1.1 billion really for the intellectual property and also part of their R&D workforce. So, you know, that they're sort of taking some of the people that have developed the phone technology and sort of applying that to what Google plan on doing. That's my understanding of it. And, you know, I think part of this as well comes at a time when HTC were really struggling. We've heard reports that they quarter on quarter, you know, that they've been losing money. And the report that I read was saying that they needed to lose some of their workforce anyway. They needed to cut costs on their workforce. So the fact that they're getting a cash infusion from Google and also sort of transferring part of their workforce away from their responsibility, it probably helps HTC overall from that respect. I don't know the ins and outs of it. That's just sort of a basic understanding that I have of the situation.
Yeah, that's pretty much how I understood it as well. And I don't want to beat a dead horse, but again, just paying people, you know, it just seems so weird. Like, could you imagine like going into your boss, and I'm not sure it goes down exactly this way, but going into a meeting with your boss and them saying, well, you know, you're going to go and now work for this other company, and our company, by the way, was paid, you know, $100,000 for you to go work for somebody else. Like, it just seems weird for someone else to get money for an employee to leave and go work for another company. And it may be part of this, may be like buying out non-competes and other contractual things. I get that, but it just, the whole phrasing of it just seems weird. And you have to keep in mind, I guess, I don't know if most of these people that they're referring to in terms of the talent, if they are in China or if they're here in the States or where they physically are. And this may be more of a cultural thing in China, but if that's the case, it seems very weird to me. And I'll quit beating that dead horse though. So our next story is Intel has scrapped plans for Project Alloy, and they still have various other R&D plans on the table for now, which includes the Movidius visual processing, the Intel RealSense depth sensing, and 6 degrees freedom solutions, their WiGig wireless VR, which is the one I'm looking forward to the most, and as well as Thunderbolt and a few others. Gary, I think you had brought this story up, so I'll let you give the details on it.
Yeah, well, it was just quite interesting to me. It was a little bit of a shock, although I guess in hindsight, a little bit unsurprising at the same time, because these Project Alloy headsets, they did show these at various events. And the one that they shown at the last one was really like a reference design for other people, third-party companies to come on board and create their own based on this reference design. Now, when you look at this, it does make sense what some of these articles have been saying about this, because Windows mixed reality has really got a lot of these companies already on their side. Now, a lot of the big technology companies that want to develop this kind of stuff have already sort of gone over to Microsoft and are creating Windows mixed reality headsets. So there probably aren't too many companies that are in a position to create high quality, high end products based on this reference design from Intel. So that sort of makes sense in hindsight. The reason I thought it was a little bit of a shock is because a lot of people were talking about this a few months ago, but it has gone quiet these past few months. So yeah, in fact, until this story broke, I'd sort of forgot a little bit about Project Alloy. But then, you know, this story brought it back up to me, and I thought it was one of the most promising pieces of technology because it's different from the Windows mixed reality headsets in most ways, because it's standalone. It is a standalone headset, but we're seeing more companies. HTC are bringing out their own standalone HMD, and some others as well, you know. So it all makes sense from that point of view. The encouraging thing from this, because initially what could be portrayed as quite a down story really in terms of VR, it's encouraging because Intel are focusing their efforts in other areas. Now, I know that Intel are passionate about VR. In fact, there was a podcast, Voices of VR podcast, last week or the week before, I listened to it. I had somebody from Intel on, and they were talking about their various VR technologies that they're developing. You know, this WiGig technology, the Intel RealSense, so the 6 degrees of freedom that the Project Alloy headset incorporated. They're still developing all of this stuff, and I think that from that side of things, it's encouraging. They're focusing their efforts on the sort of the periphery technology surrounding VR rather than creating their own headset, which, you know, I think is a positive thing overall.
Yeah, it's kind of like Intel making their own operating system. Like they wouldn't do that. And like in hindsight, it seems like that's what they were kind of trying to do. They were trying to develop kind of a platform themselves. But then Microsoft's like, we're better at that than you are. You're better at making the technology side. So we're just going to do that. But it's interesting because, I mean, remember a while back, there was that RealSense unicorn thing for the Vive, and I was kind of worried that was going to kind of disappear with this. But as you said, Gary, like they're still going to focus on the RealSense stuff. So that'll be interesting to see how that compares with the mixed reality side of things. But yeah, I think it's overall good news that Intel's focusing on what they're better at. You know, they're better at kind of making all these little technologies that everyone kind of picks up on. Like motherboards will probably all support WiGig at some point and all this type of stuff. So I think it's probably good, but it kind of sounds bad. But if you really dig into it, it's a good thing.
Yep. Okay, that's all we have in terms of the more major, I guess, news stories. So we got some smaller ones, and the one I want to get to, and I'm going to call a little bit of a mulligan here for Gary and Chris. They don't know it's on the list specifically, but it's a subject I know they're talking about. Skyrim VR was shown on ABC, and I don't know, it looks like one of more of their good morning type shows. It wasn't primetime TV or anything, but they did a 15-minute video, and that video is available on YouTube. And in this video, they showed that with Skyrim VR on the PlayStation VR, well, they didn't show it, but the Bethesda person giving the demonstration clarified on 2 separate occasions within the video, so it really wasn't him misspeaking, but said that walking locomotion would be available while using the PlayStation Move. And up until that point, we kind of, it had been assumed that it would be teleport only based on the demos when using the Move, and that if you decided to play it with a gamepad, then walking locomotion would be there. And presumably, you'll just hold down the Move button or the trigger button and kind of point to the controller where you want to walk, which is a method I'm starting to see recently with games. So it seems pretty valid. But what I want to get into and kind of discuss with you guys is here lately, I guess we had TGS, and there was another game show in the UK earlier this week. I'm drawing a blank on it at the moment, but we're getting a lot of what I guess average Joes that have now been able to play the Fallout 4 demo that's available on the HTC Vive, and we're getting some negative reports. We're getting a lot, and when we've had that with Skyrim in the past, that it's just these two Bethesda titles that seems to be really like, I don't want to say they're not the saving graces of the VR industry or anything, but they're probably the most anticipated titles. And we're just getting report after report after report that they're not actually really good. They're not this, they're really buggy. They don't perform well. Things just seem really broken. And I just kind of want to bring that up. And I know we've talked about it before on the show in sort of in this vein. But now that we have the second wave of firsthand reports, what do you guys think? Are these games going to be right at all by the time launch comes around? I'll send it over to Gary first.
It's concerning, yeah, when you see these things. You know, I never expected Fallout 4 VR to run perfectly in terms of its game mechanics or just the way it was designed. They're converting it over from a standard monitor game over to VR. I never expected it to behave the way a normal built from the ground up VR game would work. Okay, so I had that expectation anyway. I don't think everybody did have that expectation. Some people are very annoyed at the way this game will probably end up working, and that's fair enough. You know, I can understand that because we need to feel comfortable in VR, and this might not give us a very comfortable way of playing this game. But similar to the Solus project, you know, this is a game that has been recently released on the PSVR, but it's been out on the HTC Vive and Oculus Rift for a while. And this is a game that was converted from a standard monitor game, and it was converted over to VR. And it works very well in VR, but it works in a way that sort of, you know, you can't just reach down and grab something in the way that you can in a lot of VR games. You still have to use the controller, point and click, and that's sort of how that's sort of very close to how I imagine Fallout 4 VR working. You're still using a very similar way of doing it as you do on the monitor, but you're in virtual reality. That's not ideal, but I think that's the closest thing and the most we can expect from these types of games. The thing that's concerning to me about this, and there's still time for optimization, I know, but some of these reports, and I'll just go through some of these points that I've got down here. Some of the reports that have been coming out of these are that the actual game looks blurry. Okay, it looks like it's being sort of 0.7 super sampled, so the resolution of the game is very poor. And they was talking about how the center of the vision looks okay, and Norm was talking about this again. You know, we're talking a lot about tested, but Norm was talking about this because he tried Fallout 4 VR as well recently, and he was saying how the center of the vision looks great, but well, the very center, if you're looking, still looks fine, but then as soon as you move your head or look around, the resolution seems to drop down, and it might be some kind of technique they're using to keep performance at a reasonable level. So that's concerning to me. And also the 3D effect, it seems to diminish past objects that are more than a few feet away from you. So I don't want it to, you know, we know that the 3D, the stereoscopic effect, diminishes the further away an object is, and that's fine, but you don't want this sudden drop off. And this is something we've heard before from games like Skyrim that have been demoed, where it looks like things in the distance are just flat. They're on an equal plane. And all this stuff really concerns me about how well it's going to work for a personal level, because I want to enjoy these games, but also on the whole of how it's going to impact VR.
Yeah, I'm concerned about kind of the mechanics aspect. Like I watched their video called like the Fallout 4 VR experience that kind of had some developers doing some Q&A stuff with a interview person. I don't know, based on some of the footage from that, it seems like two-handed weapons you kind of just have attached to your controller. And like you said, Gary, you know, there's like that point and click of moving things around, and that's just kind of not intuitive. So like, it feels like they're not really redoing the game for VR, but they're just trying to like adapt it as quick as possible. I mean, I'm sure it's a big game, so that makes sense, but I don't know. Maybe like they're just finding out it was a lot more work than they thought, and like they didn't want to get two hands working or all this stuff. So I don't know.
Chris, just quickly before we go back to Steve, did you play the Solus project at all? Have you ever played that game?
I still haven't yet, but I really want to. I bought it a long time ago.
Yeah, it is a really good game, but you know, I feel like that gets, maybe it's just me and some of the comments that I've read. It sort of gets a pass from people because it is a very impressive VR game, and I love the way that works. But you can tell it's been adapted to VR in just the way it works. You're pointing and you're clicking the same way as I expect Fallout 4 VR to work. So I wonder, you know, I can get over that, and I love the Solus project. So I'm just wondering if I can get over some of these mechanics, which are not ideal, but I can understand why they've been done. And, you know, some people will say they've been working on this for a long time. They're probably giving it a plenty of funding, and they're also releasing it as a full price title when it's released in VR. So there is a level of expectation there. I can't argue with that at all. But for me, it doesn't concern me as much, some of these gameplay mechanical issues. But I guess, you know, until I get in there, I won't know how much I'm annoyed by them.
Yeah, I think, you know, as a person, if you've to the listener, if you've followed us for a while, you know that I don't have any issues with gamepad games in VR. I don't have very big issues with face gun. It's a phrase used when you use your face to aim and press a button to shoot. And that's okay for me if the world is engrossing and if the story's great and the visuals are great. Like I've had a lot of fun with Alien Isolation. I'm still playing that from time to time. I haven't gotten through it, and that's the way. You pick an object up off of a counter, a desk or something, and you just press X or A or whatever it is on the Xbox controller, and it just picks up. There's no motion control. You don't grab it. So I think you can have a good game in VR. I think VR still brings benefits, and that it's worth checking out, and it's still more immersive than playing it on a monitor. But at the same time, I know a lot of people are going to have issues with that. You know, when you loot, you know, is the expectation that, you know, you kill an enemy, and then when you loot them, you get down on the ground and rummage through the corpse to find some gold or whatever. Like, I think, at the same time, I think that Bethesda has to look at, you know, motion controls and standing, and in a game like this, you know, there's people out there that put hundreds of hours into these games. Can you really stand there and grab objects off the ground and stick with it that long? I don't know if I've not played Fallout 4, so I don't know if you just kind of went through it and only did the primary objectives, how quickly you could go through the game, but I still have to imagine it's in the 15 to 20 hour range. And you know, do you want to stand up and bend down and go through all of that? And I'm at this point, I'm convinced that not every VR consumer wants to do that. So some of this may be Bethesda not able to dedicate the resources or not able to convert the game to raw, you know, standard VR developed motion controls, but some of it also may be a conscious choice to try to tailor the product for as many consumers as they can. And there's still that hanging rumor that Fallout 4 is coming to PlayStation VR. And if that's the case, even that would kind of influence the decision on what they do with the motion controls itself. So I don't know about these games. I think personally, I'm certainly going to get them. I'm going to play them. I'm probably going to like them. But I'm concerned as what they'll speak towards for the industry, in that they might bring some negative attention. Because I think if these games don't really wow people, there's going to be a lot of heat, and all the naysayers are going to come out of the wood like cockroaches and going to point and make a lot of bad juju about it. So moving on, I've got some kind of rapid fire, and Chris and Gary, jump in if you want to touch on any of these. But
okay, I'll take this one. So, yeah, Robinson the Journey finally updated with motion controls. So essentially, there's touch support. It's that same exact thing where it's like pointing and clicking. You know, it's kind of like that Fallout thing we were just talking about. But yeah, so that's really cool. I was interested in that just because it's a Crytek game, and Crytek is great at you know, doing those type of story games, and you know, the graphics are always incredible. So that really makes me more interested in Robinson the Journey. I kind of wish I picked it up when it was on sale, but literally dead silence on whether this was ever going to happen. Like, people thought Crytek ran out of money and they were, you know, doing terrible, but it's good to see this update just out of nowhere. Yeah, I don't know if any of you have anything to say about that. That's probably just kind of
not really. I mean, this is a game that I tried briefly. I honestly didn't think it looked great. I was running it through Revive on my Vive, and I don't know, maybe it's something to do with that when I tried it, because I tried it when it just got released on Steam. But the fact that it's now got motion controllers is pretty good news. Although, yeah, like you say, Chris, you know, it doesn't work the way you want it to work. You're still pointing and clicking, and then the person that you're playing will then reach out and do the action that you're doing. So it's not one-to-one movement as far as I know, which is confusing because, again, you know, they modeled the thing that this character that you're playing is holding. It's a PS Move controller as far as I can see.
Yeah, that is funny.
I don't know. Am I back? Am I coming?
Yeah, you're
okay?
Good.
Okay, I don't know what happened there because I never lost you guys. But so Sweeviver had a video for it, and I didn't watch it. I kind of scrubbed through it. Sorry, Sweeviver.
Sorry,
but
let me just quickly. Last week I called Sweeviver SweVR for some reason. You know, maybe he needs to move over and branch out. But so apologies for that, Sweeviver.
You maybe gave him his new name. So anyways, in this video, so in Robinson, you're able to scan bugs and creatures, and it looked to me that you would do it with the motion control, and I guess squeeze the trigger or the grip button, and it worked. So it seemed right to me, but again, I haven't played the update. In fact, I don't own the game. I had rented it for PlayStation VR back last year when it came out. So it seems like it could work with motion controls just fine. So that was always the big speculation around it. Moving on, I'll send this one. I don't know which one you guys
send
put
it to
this
me.
on.
I put it in.
All right, so go ahead, Chris, take it.
Yeah, I don't know. This is just kind of interesting. It's kind of funny because Palmer Lucky's been doing all these strange things lately. But he's going to present on the HTC Vive stage in the Tokyo Game Show probably later today. But you know, when this podcast is up, we won't know what it was about. But hopefully next week we'll know. It's probably nothing that big. Just they have him labeled as VR enthusiast on the Vive website. So I don't know. That just seems interesting. That's a little interesting thing. And then he also did this talk. He was in Tokyo already. So I don't know. He was dressed up in anime. He was like, you know, pretty much naked. He had just like a bra on and stuff. And he was talking about the porn industry for a little bit. So I didn't really watch that fully because it was, you know, being translated back and forth. And it was just kind of annoying to watch, you know, being an English speaker, because like he would say something, someone would translate it, then someone would translate the question back to English. But I don't know. He's just doing whatever he wants, and I think that's pretty cool. But I don't know. There could be something with HTC there. We'll see.
Yeah, I saw that image of him in the bikini where he's dressed up. Yeah, he's just an eccentric guy. I think that's who he is now. He doesn't really care. He's got a lot of money, and he can do what he wants. And hopefully, he'll just stick with VR and bring us some good products. That's all I'm hoping.
Yeah. Anything you have to add, Steve?
No, I didn't really follow that. I knew that he had said on Twitter that he's going to be speaking, and he'd made that comment on Twitter before we got the news that Google was going to infuse the 1.1 billion into HTC. So it sparked up that train as well. Like, hold on, stocks are halted. Palmer speaking for HTC or with HTC in TGS, and it kind of had that fired up, even though personally I never thought he would be buying HTC in any capacity. I'm not sure if he even had enough money to do that.
Oh yeah. Okay, so anyway, the next thing is about Oculus. They kind of announced this new audio technology. They're increasingly improving the spatialization of audio tech. So they announced near field HRTF, which essentially makes sounds up closer than a meter away, kind of be louder, and like it emulates real life more. So when you have a telephone near you or something, it works better. There's like a little demo video. I don't know if you guys saw this, but it works really well. Like I was just listening to it on these headphones. And then the other thing was volumetric sound sources. So you can have a sound that's kind of isolated, or it can have like this radius. So they had like a pond sound here, and then it widened, and I don't know. It sounds good. Like it sounds like they're making really good improvements in the sound space, which is always good, I think.
Now, I thought, I could almost swear maybe it was the accounting experience. I don't know what you call it, a game, but I almost, you pick up the phone in there, and I thought it did that. Like, as you pulled it away, like, maybe they hard coded and wrote something very specific for that, as opposed to using something that's more kind of API level. But I'm almost pretty sure I've seen that kind of effect in some VR games before.
I don't pay attention to sound anywhere close as I feel like I should pay attention to sound in VR, because it really hits me when sound in a particular game or experience is particularly bad or particularly good. It really, I notice it then, but other than that, in sort of, I'd say 75-80% of experiences or games that I play, the sound is just there and it does its job, and that's, I guess that's the best way it can be. But then occasionally, like I say, you'll find an experience or a game that does it particularly good or particularly bad, and that's when it hits you just how important sound needs to be in VR. So this is good news either way.
Yeah, I just read up a little bit more, and I guess I did play accounting too, and like the phone was super cool in my opinion, but I guess what they're saying is the sounds did get louder before, but now there's a more fine tuning of where exactly it is near your head. Like you can kind of tell if it's here or here. Like there's more spatialization just in that close space. So that's interesting. I don't know. I hope it gets integrated in all games. I wish there's a way to just push updates to like every game with Oculus stuff. Just like every game has better audio or something, but whatever.
Yep. Also at TGS, so there wasn't a ton of at least PlayStation VR news that come out in terms of announced games, and it seems like every show people are sitting back and saying, okay, I hope they announce this, and this, and it ends up being this major thing, and it never really happens. And but one game did get announced, and it's I admit, and the internet can flame me for it, and I'm not very familiar with the property, but I understand that Zone of Enders, Zone of Enders 2 is getting a PS or PlayStation remake with full VR support, and a lot of people seem pretty excited for this. And Hideo Kojima and Konami, I guess Hideo's not working on this project specifically. Maybe he is. I don't think we know. But Konami is putting this out there, and a lot of people are excited for that. So it's something to keep your eye on, especially if you have a PlayStation VR, because this is one of the really liked franchise, and it's kind of like Rez. Rez has a lot of kind of just history with it, and I think Zone of Enders 2 is kind of in that same vein. It's more of a cult type following at this point. And then the last piece is that at a Korean VR festival, the LG kit was there, but no improvements, no changes, no real additional information on it. And I put that on the list to bring up. We don't have to spend much time on it, but really, we talk about this LG headset quite a bit for something that isn't even formally really announced, and it's in relation to the next headsets. Okay, you have the Rift and the Vive and the PlayStation VR, and it's like, well, should I buy something? No, wait for this LG, because it's probably going to be better than the Vive. And I remember, I guess was it at CES that it was originally shown? That would have been back in January, and here we are, is going into October almost, and nothing on it. So I just want to put it out there that apparently the project's not been canceled. It's still a thing, but we don't know squat about it.
No, I think they really need to try and get this device out there. My thinking about this is that the differences between that headset and the Vive are sort of incremental at this point that they need to make some kind of sort of improve the resolution significantly to what it was last time, because from all reports that we heard about it, it was very close to the Vive in actual appearance. So I'm just thinking, they need to maybe rework it, give it a slightly higher resolution, maybe change the form factor if they can. It's got that flip up visor, which is, a good addition. But will that really persuade people to jump on that other than the Vive. The only other thing would be the price. If they can produce this thing for a very low price, and it could easily replace a Vive headset, then I guess they could do that. But for me, I'm thinking they need to maybe, the reason they've not done anything is that maybe trying to refine the specs of it and get it to a slightly higher spec, to more significant spec increase than the Vive.
Yeah, I have no idea.
So like, I don't want to shortchange that flip up feature, because I really, really want that. And I have the 3 major headsets and none of them do it. And I'm always kind of looking down my nose bridge when someone comes into the room or something. It's like, it has to be one of those features that, like, once you have it, you don't realize how you lived without it. Like, I totally believe that's going to be a thing. And do either of you know if the Pimax 8K, like, it does everything under the sun? So I don't remember it doing that.
No, I've not seen that reported specifically. No.
Okay, well, that's all of the news we have. Let's go ahead and get into some games. And looking at the list here, I don't think there's a lot of games that we've played collectively. So it may be just a bunch of one-off takes on some games. But I'll start with one that Chris and I have played, and that's Into the Rhythm, or Into the Rhythm specifically VR. Chris, you want to take the lead on this one?
Yeah, sure. It's another rhythm game. It's kind of has that drum aspect of Guitar Hero and Rock Band, where like there's notes coming at you except you have drums. I really like that idea. Like it played really well. Is this really new? Like I didn't get much information. I just jumped in it. Like I think it's newly released, right?
Yeah, that's my take. I don't have the Steam page up at the moment.
Okay. I guess some things I love the graphics, I love the gameplay, it's fun. Maybe some things I don't like about it, the sounds it makes when you hit the drums change depending on where in the song it was. I kind of wish it was more true to life, where the drums are the same. So like you hit a I don't know, snare or whatever, and it's the same every time. But yeah, it does have that Guitar Hero aspect to it, and it is really fun. Right now I could only see 4 songs, and I don't think the community has made songs yet, because I think that's kind of the goal, is they have this level editor where you can make your own songs. I didn't get to jump into that just yet, but I think it'll be cool if that happens and when that happens. But it's not like a thing where you can just take a song and it converts it into the notes like Audio Shield, for example. So I think it needs like a bigger user base to be usable, because right now there's like 5 songs you can play total, and they're a specific genre, so not everyone will like that. What do you think, Steve?
So I like this. We did get a key for it. The developer emailed us, and I said, yeah, send me the key, because I used to play drums. And I know here on the show, we talked about Thumper recently, and Gary said, oh, I'm not really a rhythm game kind of person. But I said, I told the developer, I was like, yeah, I'd like to check it out, because I love rhythm games, and I used to play the drums. So I jumped into this. I tried it both on the Vive and the Rift. Surprisingly, I liked it with the touch controllers more. And I say that because I haven't been able to try any other drum game. I don't know why. I probably should have at this point. But I expected that I would like the Vive wands better because they more resemble a stick. But I found that I like touch a little bit better because all the weight was in my hand, and the stick, when you're in the game, you shouldn't really feel the front end of the stick, the part where you hit the drums. So I thought it worked really well with the touch controllers in that sense. The game, I did pull up the Steam page. The game came out on the 18th. It's $19.99 price right now. And there are, I can't remember, 4 or 5 songs open when you first go into the game. But if you get an S score, which is higher than an A, I guess that all goes back to like Capcom and Street Fighter, like, S being higher than A. But if you get an S score on those 4 or 5 songs that you can start with, then it unlocks more songs. And there's leaderboards, and all in all, like, I thought this was really fun. And I'm Not sure if it's because, again, I used to play drums a long time ago, and it's because of that. But the physics felt good. Graphically, it looked really good, really polished. You had two environments that I could see, a more sort of tech, industrial, neon type environment, and then another was just kind of like randomly in a forest. And I chose that one. I thought it was pretty cool. And like you say, though, Chris, the one thing that I did find disorienting a little bit was you have 6 drums, and they all make different sounds, but in the middle of a song, the same drum that you would hit would make a different sound, and they mix it up according to whatever the song was doing. So I understand why they did it, but it's a little bit, you know, if you're trying to kind of staying with the flow of the music, then all of a sudden this thing you've hit, you know, maybe 30 times in the last 60 seconds, you hit it again and it just suddenly makes a different sound. It was a little bit jarring, but still, I think if you like rhythm games, and if you like drums specifically, it's worth checking out. And I think it can be a deeper experience. You can make levels. Hopefully the community takes off and does a lot with it. So it may be, you know, if you don't really plan on getting into it that deep, it may be a little bit on the expensive side, but other than that, it's all really, really well made. It's not an early access thing. It didn't break on me. It all just worked. So I really appreciated that aspect of it.
Yeah, I agree. And it reminds me of Music Inside. I don't know if any of you guys have ever played this, but it's the same type of thing where there's drums, except the drums kind of have an orb that blows up, and when it's at the top of the drum, you hit it. I don't know. I bought that game a while back, and I played that a lot. It reminded me of that. I kind of enjoyed Into the Rhythm more than that. Just, I don't know. It depends, I guess. Like, they're both fun games. If you're into the Guitar Hero thing, I would rather get Into the Rhythm. This other one's more arcade feeling. I don't know.
Okay, let's send it over to Gary.
Okay, well, I'll just talk very quickly about a demo that I played. This is a pre-alpha demo. It's available on Steam now, so you can give this a try. It's the IOTA Project. Now, this is a mech game, really, and you find yourself in a very, very bright, colourful mech in a city environment. And like I say, it's an early alpha demo at this stage, so don't expect a great deal. But I thought what was there felt great, and if they can expand this into a full game with some kind of story in there as well, I think it'd be you know, a top VR title. What it is at the moment, you find yourself in a brief tutorial where it shows you how to operate the mech, and the way it works is it's motion controllers, so you know, it's a room scale game, and you can move the motion controllers, and then you'll see these huge arms that belong to this mech move outside of your cockpit. So you control the arms. Obviously there's a delay because they want to make it realistic. As you move your motion controllers, you'll see the arm move slightly afterwards, and you can destroy buildings. You have various weapons that you can attach to each of these arms as well, aim at the enemies, and so you progress through this little tutorial, and then you're sort of given free reign, really. You're just given this task of patrolling the city, and you're given, you know, you can walk around this city, and then various enemies will come towards you, and you can attack them with these guns, these weapons that attach to your arms, these rockets, and you can also use melee weapons as well, which work pretty well in this game. Overall, I'd say that I'm looking forward to seeing what they do with this. What's there's great. It's very limited. It reminds me in some ways of Powers VR when that was first released in early access. I thought that showed a lot of potential, and that game, Powers VR, has actually had a lot of support from the developer, and he's still working on it. Is expanding on it a lot, and I like to jump in every time there's been an update on Powers to see what the developer's done next. Now, this feels a little bit like that first entry-level point of Powers VR, where there's sort of there's not a great deal to do. You're just shooting enemies. I want to see what this developer will do with this game in terms of giving you some reason, some incentive to progress through it. You know, like I say, really what I want is like a narrative, if I'm being honest. But I don't know if it'll get that, but some kind of depth to the gameplay will be great. But it's definitely worth trying, that one.
Okay. Chris, what do you got up that you've been playing?
Yeah, a few weeks back I said I'd play Mindshow, and then I like didn't for the following show. I said I'd report back next show, but I finally got around to playing it. It's essentially this game where you can make your own movies. I mean, I guess it's not a game, it's more of like a utility, something to have fun with. You embody the characters, so you do like a T pose at the beginning, and then it has pretty good like inverse kinematics. Like you can look at your hands and stuff of whatever you are. You can be an alien or people. There's all these different people. Yeah, and you just plop into a scene. You can place objects. Like I placed a cactus once. I don't know. It's fun. Like I really want it to be on Rift though, just because the microphone, the vibe sucks like I anticipated. That was the thing I was worried about. There's a lot of peaking and stuff when you do the voice acting. But it's kind of cool because it lets you like make movies with yourself. So like you embody one character, say lines, like pause in between, and then you play the other character, and then you do the cameraman after, and it exports a video super fast. Like it's almost faster than real time. It exports a video. So it just exports it right into your documents. You can upload it wherever. I don't know. It's a really cool tool.
So I have to ask, Chris, we actually had someone, and I don't have it in front of me, so apologies to that listener, actually reach out and said, how in the hell have you guys not talked about Mindshow yet? So maybe it was in response to you saying you were going to talk about it. So have you made a movie, and will you be putting it up on the channel? Sorry to put you on the spot.
I have. I made my first movie. It was really terrible. Like this is something you got to do when you're alone. Like you can't have people listening, like I went in the surgeon room and there was like, I opened up this person's body and there's just candy in there. I'm just like, yum. And then I started eating the candy, and then I had played another guy who was like, oh my God, what are you doing? So it's so polished. This is like one of the most polished things I've ever tried. Like the loading, when you finish a movie, balloons are everywhere. I don't know. It's super, super well done. Like, I don't know how they did this for free. Like they must have had a lot of funding to make this. So I think that's why people wanted us to talk about it, just because it's really, really well done. And like when it's rendering, there's this fun music, so it's not even boring. Like there's nothing boring about this. And, I don't know. It's just something to, if you want to make a movie, like you got to do it this way. Like I don't see why anyone else would do anything else. So I will try to make a movie.
So naturally, kids, I think, are really good. When they're 7, 8, 9 years old, they can be real creative. Their brains are just in another place. Is there anything gory or anything? Because I'd like to just put my kids in there, my son specifically, and just see what he comes up with. Is there any reason I shouldn't do that? Is there any content or anything that would be an issue that you can think of?
No, it's really cartoony graphics, and like, the surgeon scene I was expecting to be maybe gory, but there's just candy in the person's body. So like, I think that's a good example of how they have portrayed it. But it brought me back to when I was like, like you said, like 7 or 8, I was making PowerPoint presentations back then, moving little characters around and like using PowerPoint to animate stuff. I don't know. It felt like I was like really young again doing that. It's
so bizarre you say that. My son's 7. He came home from school yesterday and said, Dad, do you have PowerPoint? I'm like, what? Yeah, but why the hell do you want PowerPoint? And he's like, well, I can do so. And he did exactly what you just said. I guess he's learning it at school. And so, yeah, I'm going to put him in this. Thanks for talking about it.
It's I don't know. I love it. I need to go back and do it after. It's so good. I need to make a movie. I don't know what it's going to be about, but there'll probably be a movie on the channel soon.
All right. Well, we look forward to it. I look forward to it. So I'll go ahead and go next. And I'm going to talk about a game. We didn't get keys to it until earlier today. So this is going to be more of a preview. But it's a game that I had remember seeing something about. It was a crowdsourced game, Xing, The Land Before. And it came out yesterday. I believe we're recording on Saturday, the 23rd. So no, it would have came out Thursday. I think it came out on the 21st. And it's a game I remember, and I knew it was in VR development, and I forgot about it and didn't track it, and then boom, it's out. So like I said, we got a key this morning, and I've only put about 30 to 45 minutes into it. But so far, I'm really impressed. I like a world that visually is creative and represents things that you can't necessarily go and do in real life. And so far, you seem to be, it's all first person, it's all fully motion controlled. You do walking locomotion. As far as I know, I didn't see a teleport mechanic. Now, and that would make sense because the game is available both traditional monitor and VR support. But you point your controller and you press a button to walk, and that's kind of what I was referring to when I briefly spoke on Skyrim and its support for walking locomotion in when using the Move controller. So you point your controller, squeeze the trigger, and you'll do walking locomotion, and it actually works pretty well. Now, I don't think that is a type of thing that will work for every game, but in this game, because it's mostly, it reminds me of Myst or Abduction or to an extent, the Alice VR game that came out a long time ago. But I think it's really well done. And I think possibly, I haven't played Abduction in forever because it's had so many performance issues. But this game may be better than Abduction. Possibly, and it's just all really, really well done. It takes you to this other world. Like currently, I'm in a level, for lack of a better word, and I'm on a beach, and you solve puzzles, and you interact with things, and you move platforms around so you can traverse. There is no combat. I haven't come across any other characters, so I have some concerns that it may be a little isolating. It might maybe have some feelings of loneliness, but that also may be part of the narrative because it seems to you seem to have died. It doesn't show you dying or anything, but you seem to be sort of in this afterlife type place, and you still have business to tend to, even though you're in the afterlife. It just all looks pretty fantastic. Chris, have you seen? I know you haven't played it, and Gary, I know you haven't played it, but had you guys ever heard about this game? Do you remember it?
I heard it mentioned just recently, the past few days. I know that it's getting quite a good reception from people, so it's definitely one that I'm going to try. But yeah, I don't know a lot about this game.
So I know nothing. So
okay, so when you do try it, after you get into the game, make sure you go into the menu and pay a lot of attention to the graphic settings. So it seems like they open up as if you were playing the monitor version, and you can really dial this in and make it look beautiful. And I tried it on the Rift, but it gives you an in-game frame counter. Like you don't have to pull up any of the extra like Oculus tools or Steam tools. It's the in-game frame counter, so you can tweak all of the graphics and watch the impact that it has to your frames. And if you go into high, like I always do, I'm like, oh, I got a 1080 Ti, I can do high everything. Nope, this game dropped right down to 45 frames real quick, and I was in reprojection, which you will feel because it's a walking locomotion, and anytime you play that type of game and in reprojection, it can be easier to make you susceptible to motion sickness. So I thought that was every game should now do that, because performance is such an issue in VR, and everyone's worried if their graphics cards can run this game, and in settings, and what can I set, what can I get by with. If they put the frame counter right there in the game, and you can toggle sliders and make adjustments and see those impacts, just for this to be a crowdsourced sort of indie title, and they did that when most other games don't, even by major developers, big kudos to those guys for doing that, because I absolutely love that.
I agree. I think that'd be great to have that sort of native within every game, where you can just sort of tweak it just a little bit, just to see the impact of all these different things that you're doing would be fantastic. I guess the reason some don't do it is because they don't want you to notice. They don't want you to notice a game that's got poor performance and complain about it or something like that. So, but yeah, I think it would be great if you could do that, and it gave you plenty of options to adjust it.
Okay. Does anybody have a game they want to jump in with, or?
Go ahead, Chris, because I've not really got anything else that I really need to talk about this week, to be honest.
Okay, this is just a small little thing. Google Earth got updated a week or so ago to add Street View, and I wanted to check that out. Because, like in Google Earth, you could always kind of go to human scale if you wanted to, but it's all geometry bad and stuff. And it's funny because like Google Earth had Street View on like the Gear VR. So like I remember, well, that type of 360 image thing. So like on Gear VR, I remember having that experience, but I've never had it on a higher res headset that actually has the rendering capability to render the full image. So it was great. I mean, it's cool because you fly into a space and then you get a little sphere and you just click it and you're in there. It's 2D, obviously. Like, it's not great in terms of the 3D aspect, but it is really high definition, like at least higher resolution than the headsets are. So it's just cool to kind of, you know, you can walk down a neighborhood or whatever. But I guess the one thing that's annoying is you can't move down the street. Like, there's no arrow buttons to move down the street. And I think that's something everyone really wants. So you have to back out and then back in again. But kind of the even cooler thing about this update to me was the fixed human scale toggle. So that essentially means you're the same scale even when you're flying way up in the sky. So you can get a really good perspective on how big everything is. And like, if you stand on top of a skyscraper, it's the right size. Everything's the right size. So I just had a lot of fun flying around the city I live in real scale and like flying through the streets. Like, that's a really cool use case.
Yeah, honestly, I've played this a lot this past week. We spoke about it briefly in last week's episode. We did speak about the Street View update, because that's really how it was sort of shown off. It was this Street View update. To me, that's secondary to the human scale. The human scale part of this update is just revolutionized this experience for me. And I've played this probably more than any other VR game this past week. As much as I try and drag myself away from it to try these other titles, I just want to go back into Google Earth VR. But you can also, because that orb that's there for the Street View, you can just lift that up the same way as you do in the lab. So you can just lift that up and it will sort of expand, and then you can just view the Street View for a while, then take the controller away from you. So it works like that, and it works probably a little bit better to do it that way, because like you say, you can't move down Street View. Hopefully that will come in another update. But to me, this, I mean, honestly, this is the killer app for VR, and the human scale has made me appreciate it far more. Just that sense that you are actually flying over these places rather than looking down on a model village. And, you know, yeah, I mentioned this last week, so I won't keep talking about this.
Okay, I'm going to give another sort of quick preview because I haven't played it enough to really give in depth enough to really, you know, say one way or another in terms of a recommendation. But I did pick up Project Cars 2 this morning, and I have been yearning for a racing game on PC VR that I could use, that was easy to use, easy to jump in and out, but offered some more fidelity. And Project Cars 2 was something that I was very curious about. And the problem is right now it's $60, and we did not get a key for it. And I'm not really much of a sim enthusiast, though. I really don't have much of an interest in experimenting with tires and doing pit stops and really exploring the value that a game this deep has to offer. But I couldn't help myself from checking it out, and I'm still within the 2 hours, so I may return it. And it's not because I think the game is bad or anything like that, but it really, this was a way for me to give it a try to see if it's going to meet my very niche and very rare wishes, which is honestly my favorite racing game in VR is Drive Club VR, and that's because it's more arcadey and because I can hop in and out of it. I don't have to fiddle with anything. It all just works, and I'm wanting that on PC. And I think Project Cars 2 is much better in terms of accomplishing that, certainly, than Assetto Corsa. Assetto Corsa is a non-starter for me, just because of having to take the headset off between races. And I never played Project Cars 1 outside of the free Pagani edition, but that was certainly better integrated from a VR perspective than Assetto Corsa was. Project Cars 2 is even better in that you can launch the game and go straight into your headset, and everything's there. It kind of works like Drive Club VR for PlayStation VR in that sense that most of the menus before you set up a race are kind of presented as a 2D plane, and you really don't have to take the headset off at all. And I did encounter some bugs though, and if it's right now it's not very well optimized, and admittedly I haven't spent a lot of time trying to optimize it, but I had to back things down quite a bit. And again, I'm on a 1080 Ti, so it doesn't look as good as I'd hope. Like I feel I have a 1080 Ti, and I've played a lot of games that look way better than this. So what's going on? I don't know if it's because of all the physics and all that goes into a high quality racing sim that maybe detracts from some of the visuals. So yeah, I'm probably going to refund it, but I'm only saying that because of what I'm looking for in terms of a very niche person. I just want someone to make an arcadey VR racer that has wheel support. Like, it's all I want. So again, I'm not trashing the game in any way, but it's not giving me that performance improvement in terms of clarity and resolution that I want over Drive Club VR. And since Drive Club VR does everything else I want, then that's going to be my go-to when I feel like, driving a race car.
This is really interesting to me because I've often mentioned about Project Cars, the original Project Cars. I've got Project Cars, Assetto Corsa, and Dirt Rally, and I've played all three of these games in VR. And you're right, my preference of those three for a long time was Assetto Corsa, because I could ramp up super sampling and get a very, very clear, crisp image in that. But you're right, Steve, the thing that takes away from that game, and the thing that stops me from playing that game, is the fact you have to take your headset off and change it, set up each race individually. It's not a very good VR experience overall. I've got actually recently, I meant to mention this a couple of weeks ago, but I've recently gone back into the original Project Cars, and because I'm running it on a 1080 Ti now, I can ramp up the super sampling a lot more. Even though you have to lower some settings still in the original Project Cars, you can get the super sampling higher, and it's the clarity within that game. To me, at the moment, I'm playing far more Project Cars than I am any other racing game, the original Project Cars. And it's interesting to me because I want to get Project Cars 2. I like racing games. I'm by no means like a hardcore racing enthusiast gamer or anything like that, but I do like racing games with a racing wheel. But yeah, I've heard that the performance is slightly better than the original Project Cars, so that's sort of appealing to me. But at the same time, I've got 3 VR racing games already, and by positioning myself where I'm not really a VR racing enthusiast, I can't really justify this cost at the moment. It's just I feel like I'm getting all I need from the original Project Cars, and lowering settings and sort of super sampling it a little bit. I think it's a good game.
That's exactly where I'm at. It's a value proposition, and I'm not getting $60 worth of value for my very narrow wish list, and again, I just want to say that it's not a slight on the game at all. And I know there are some people on Reddit that are really diving into this and making spreadsheets, and will figure out where you need to be in terms of settings. I don't have the time to invest in that. I just want to drop a headset on, sit down in front of my wheel and go. And when I do go, I want that to be more arcadey than anything. So hopefully we'll get a Need for Speed or something, a game like that is in VR that's just fun to just go out and be non-realistic, like very arcadey. So Gary, we both have it on the list to talk about some AR apps. Do you want to get into that, since we both did the iOS 11 update?
Yeah, I was just thinking, we've got a few games here, but I don't know if anybody's got anything else they want to mention before we just briefly get into this iOS 11 update. Has anybody else got any specific games they want to talk about?
I guess I'll briefly mention. So, I said last week or the week before that I was holding off on the gallery because I wanted to play it as close to episode 2 as possible. But at this point, I'm not sure we're going to get a release date. I think we're just going to wake up one morning and it's just going to be released. This seems to be the way it's going. I don't understand why. Oh, it's available. It's got a Steam page now, but no date. So it's very obscure. So I decided to go ahead and play episode 1. So I knew I would have it completed by the time episode 2 dropped. And I played it in one setting. And I had played around with it before, and I'll just kind of throw my thoughts out there quickly, that it's a good game. It's a really good game, and it looks fantastic now that I'm playing on a 1080 Ti and I'm just able to max everything out. For this to have been a launch game or a near launch game, and for it to work as well, and maybe it's had some updates over the year, but it is a great game that I recommend everyone checking out. I will say though, to be a little kind of hypercritical, is that when you really step back and look at it, there wasn't much there in terms of narrative. Like, you're on the beach, you're looking for your sister, you go into the sewer, you go down the elevator, and you activate the thing, and then you go into the spaceship rock portal thing. End of episode 1. So like, when you just look at like the kind of the bullet points, there's not much happened. You really don't know anything.
Yeah.
And I'm sure episode 2 is going to really clarify that, and I know it's going to be longer and it's going to be even better. But I was actually at the end, like, you know, I guess maybe I heard you talk about it, Gary, but I was expecting sort of like this kind of cliffhanger ending that just had me on the edge of my seat, and I'm like, no, that's it. Like,
yeah,
maybe
I didn't. Well, when I spoke about this, because this was in when I was talking about it in the Game of the Year show a long time ago now, but I was saying that the tone changes at the end. That was the big takeaway for me. It was just the end of the game. It's just like a completely different to how it starts off. But you're right. You know, I've actually gone through this the past couple of weeks. I've tried to sort of start playing this game again, but because the narrative really is quite sparse. When you're right, when you take a step back and look at what's happening in that game, it is quite sparse, and I didn't feel like that the first playthrough, but going through it again, I'm just thinking, I don't know if I can do this again. It was quite special the first time I played through it, that first time when VR was still very new, but to play through it again now, I don't think I can do it, but I'm still looking forward to episode 2 anyway.
And I will say, because, you know, I'm sure Cloudhead is watching this, but update episode 1 so that when you're doing that last kind of more difficult puzzle, it wasn't that difficult, but you know, where you're putting the vacuum tubes in the panel to release to get in there, like, put a radio, like, let me find that radio and turn it off. Like, that music was annoying the hell out of me, and I just wanted to turn it off. I literally went into the Steam menu and turned the volume all the way down while I finished that puzzle. Like, just let me shoot the radio, let me flick a switch, let me throw something at it to make it stop. Just a small grip, but overall, it's a great game. So go ahead, let's get us into the AR.
Oh yeah, sorry, yeah. So we could talk about this. So last week Steve and I own iPhones, and we've got compatible iPhones for this AR kit update. So, you know, iOS 11, it's out for the iPhone now. And so this is the first sort of update which will give access to all these AR apps and stuff. So we've jumped into there. Steve, I've not spoke to you about this, so I don't know which ones you have tried, but what I want to say to begin with is, first of all, you know, I've tried a few of these AR apps and they work very well. I've got an iPhone 6S, so I'm running this on sort of the lowest end iPhone that you can really run this kind of stuff on. But it works very well. A lot of the time, you know, I've tried a few of these apps. I don't really want to go into the apps, a lot of them that I've tried, because they're almost sort of insignificant to me. Steve, I'll leave it up to you to mention a few. But to me, every time I'm going into these apps, all I'm doing is really sort of analyzing and looking at how well the technology works. That's really what I'm interested in. I'm not looking at what the apps are doing. I'm looking at how accurate the tracking is on these. And it works very well. I've got to say, as long as you're in a very well lit room, and this is the big thing, it needs to be very well lit, at least in my experience, then the tracking is very good. It's not perfect, but it's very good, and there's very little movement. And I will say that depending on the app, I expected it to be more of a case that it was baked into the actual firmware, or the firmware of the iPhone itself, this iOS 11, as to how well it tracks. And I suppose to a certain extent it is, but I guess there's also sort of limitations of what each individual app can do, because I've noticed some apps don't track quite so well as others. I don't know your experience, Steve, but for me, that's my takeaway. I think they've done a great job. You know, this is just running on standard iPhone hardware, and the fact that you can use it to this level is very, very impressive to me. Yeah.
So, you know, AR, one of the things is, it's kind of, you know, we're acting like that, oh, now AR is available on the iPhone. And if we're going to be truthfully honest, AR was available prior to this update. You could play Pokemon Go. Many people chimed in to let us know that there is, in fact, and has been for quite a while, an app that will let you hold your phone up to a sign and have it translated. And I'll just say to those people, like, while I personally didn't know that was an app, we were kind of more or less speaking in terms of trying to keep it simple for the sake of conversation. So kind of keep that in mind, just in generalities. So with AR, with iOS 11, I think the value here is that it's the AR kit, and I'm not a developer of smartphone apps, but I have done software development in the past, and that's really the big news here, is that there's a tool set and one that's specific for AR. So what I'm assuming is occurring is that the more developers have more of a reach into the space, and you can pull some things off with a lot less work. So all in all, I think it works really well. The problem that I have is that there's not a ton of utility. Like, this is not something I'm going to play with. This is not, VR Roundtable isn't going to start doing iOS and Google AR app reviews or anything. We just really wanted to, or I at least wanted to talk about it, just because this is kind of the first really consumer AR product that we can all easily get our hands on. The things that I tried, there's an Egg Inc. Simple game. My kids had actually already had it in the account. It's a real simple game where you just like tap a button and chickens come out and go into a chicken house, whatever you call those, the hen house. And what you could do is, instead of having the kind of the farm graphics, you could just put this farm on your dining room table or whatever, and it all worked really well. And I also tried out the IKEA app where you can place furniture and stuff, and again, it worked really well. And what I found really interesting was in my kitchen, I have an open floor plan. I just placed this random table and walked all the way into my bedroom, and it tracked it and came back, and it was still there. So all of that worked as intended. But more importantly is that when I got so far away, it knew that, and it quit. It did the layers with real life correctly. Like, the walls of my house like blocked the view of the table once I got far enough away. And the software doesn't know where a wall is in my house, and that's one of the problems with layered augmented reality is the software being intelligent to know that if I put my hand up, is my hand behind the virtual object or in front of the virtual object. And so what it looks like ARKit has done is that if you get so far away, it just assumes. And so when I got so far away from that virtual table that I placed in my house, it kind of faded away. And then as I got closer, it kind of faded back into view. So I thought that was just something I'd never really expected, and it was a nice little touch that they're at least thinking about that sort of thing, because it's going to be a complex problem to solve.
Just on quickly, Steve, because I believe you're running an iPhone 7 Plus, is that right?
Yeah, I have a 7 Plus.
So you've got the two cameras on there. Now, do you know, I don't know, and this is just a thought that's occurred to me, but do you know if ARKit takes advantage of two cameras in order to help tracking, or is it just still using one camera?
I do not know.
No.
I know they've said that with the, I guess maybe the X, and that's one reason why they had those fancy, you could be a poop emoji or whatever from the keynote, that I know it will use that array of sensors on the front to assist. I'm pretty sure they said that, but going back to the 7 Plus or even the 8, I don't know if they're using the two cameras in that way. Possibly on the 8 though, because they very intently changed it to the vertical arrangement from the horizontal arrangement.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I don't know about that. Did you notice any? I don't know the variety of apps that you try, but did you notice any sort of drift in terms of the AR objects or anything like that as you sort of rotated around them?
Nope. They stayed pretty much where they were. Now, I had placement issues. So in my kitchen, I have granite countertops, and granite can be a sort of a random pattern. So it didn't want to detect that as a flat surface. sometimes, and
Yeah.
even when it did, and when I like really zoomed into the objects and got close, I saw that they were floating like an inch or so off of the actual surface. But other surfaces that I tried that were more consistent in contrast worked better there. I didn't have any. There's really, like, I saw no glitches. Everything worked right.
Yeah.
It did wreak hell on battery life. Like, my phone got notably warmer. Battery life was, I doubt I could get through an hour or maybe of playtime before my battery would be drained. And that's not running anything graphically intense. These are all very simple things. I really, I'm probably not going to try it and do much else with it at this point, other than the Machines game, which is the game they demoed at the keynote. And that's, well, I haven't checked in a couple days, but at least at launch that wasn't out yet. And that is a game that I think may actually have value, in terms of playability. The rest of it was just kind of checking the tech out and just kind of seeing that it's kind of neat, and from a tech enthusiast perspective, like, oh, this is kind of cool, but it's not something I'm going to spend hours doing every day or anything.
No, I'm exactly the same. With my phone, I did notice that a little bit of drift, but even then I was thinking, this is working incredibly well. It's very, very solid compared to how well, not really. I did expect it to be pretty good. But considering it's using sort of this standard just mobile phone technology, a single camera to do all this, it's very impressive. I've shown it to my wife and she wasn't impressed, of course. I was really disappointed because I was showing her all these AR apps and she was saying, yeah, it's okay, but she really wasn't into it. And I was saying, look, it's not the app, what the app is doing. I was showing her like just it might have been the Warcraft Fireblade app, actually. I don't know if you tried that, Steve, but the AR portion of that is quite good. You can, very limited, but quite good. It just places a mech on the surface in front of you, and then you can play a short animation. But I was saying, it's not just the fact that it's superimposing it on top of the camera. You can actually rotate around, zoom in, move everywhere. And I don't know, this leads on to one of my final points on this, is a concern of how impressive it really is at this stage to just an average consumer who isn't a tech enthusiast and doesn't really care about this stuff. Are they going to take notice of this?
I don't think so too much in the current phase with the software that's out there. I think when major utility is shown, and someone's going to come up with a great utility that makes this pop, for struggling for words to say it, but basically, like, there's going to be something I think that makes the average Joe go, oh, I get it, like, sort of clicks with them, the value of superimposing virtual objects with the real world. Like, I think that's gonna happen, and then inevitably everyone's going to say, well, I don't want to hold my phone up. I don't want to hold my phone and do that. And it's like, well, no, this gets funding, this gets developers experienced, and this creates a market for a hardware company to then go, hey, there's a reason for us to make glasses now. And Google's tried, and Google Glass didn't take off, but if they had a whole legion of developers out there that knew how to make content and actually had good ideas that have already been executed in the smartphone space, all of a sudden Google Glass or products like Google Glass now have a major value, I think. Yeah, it's I think same way with watches. Like, I have an Apple Watch here, and it's like, the idea of a smartwatch isn't that new. Like, but making it and having that whole backlog of people that were making smartphone apps that you can then launch a smartwatch as soon as you can get the hardware right, as soon as they could miniaturize it enough into the size of a watch, then instantly there was value, because all of those smartphone developers could instantly translate their apps to the watch space. I think the same thing's going to happen when someone makes glasses, and after all these developers that have some experience and someone has ideas of value, then it's instantly going to make sense, and it's going to scale and transfer relatively easy.
I hope so. Yeah, that's a good point, actually. Chris, I don't know, have you tried any AR stuff, mobile phone AR?
I mean, other than Pokemon Go, not really, just because I have a Galaxy S6, so I'm still waiting on AR Core to get rolled out more, but I'll try to get my hands on an iPhone. Like my mom has an iPhone, just to kind of check it out. But yeah, that sounds promising. I feel like Pokemon Go needs an update that incorporates this, because I remember the tracking on that was just terrible. I think that would add a lot to that.
Yeah, well, the thing is, I've got to say, you know, it's very impressive. What's there? The technology is sound, even at this early stage where people don't need to buy any extra hardware or anything like that necessarily to give this thing a try. So from that point of view, I think it's great. And yeah, it's where it will take it in the future. And hopefully eventually we'll get these glasses that I want, at least.
Yep. Okay, well, if we have nothing else to discuss, let's move on to our last order of business. And as we've said for the last couple of episodes, we sort of have this giveaway going on because we kind of wanted to somewhat celebrate our 1 year of doing VR Roundtable. We had episode 52. We approximated it because none of us were really sure when this started exactly, but we know we had made 52 shows, so it had to be close enough to 1 year. So we held a small giveaway, and we're going to give keys out to several locations where we post the show, or we're on iTunes for people that did reviews. So I just wanted to call out some of those, and we gave each entry, so to speak, a number, and then just used a random number generator in Google to pick the winners. But our iTunes review winner was and I'll go ahead and say sorry if I mispronounce your username. I mean, it's the internet. There's no way to know what people intend behind these things. But our iTunes review winner was Elevate Diddy. And then the number 8 Diddy, and they chose Bloody Zombies and Just in Time Incorporated, and so they've already gotten their keys and are enjoying those games. Our Oculus subreddit winner was Lufner. They chose Preda, Vendetta Rising, and Blasters of the Universe and have their keys. The remaining winners need to reach out and contact us because we have no way of getting a hold of you. But for the YouTube comment winner on episode 52, user VR365, just shoot us a message, or we'll respond to your comment and let you know that you were a winner, so try to prompt you. But get in contact with us, send us an email at vrroundtable@gmail.com. and we'll get you your keys. And then likewise on episode 53, YouTube comment winner is M. Jurgis. That's MJURJIS. Again, we'll respond to your comment as a sort of a prompt, but get with us and we'll get you your keys. And then lastly, on the Vive subreddit, I've sent a private message to user Taylor R137. So when you see that, come get your keys. So thanks to everyone for commenting on our shows and leaving iTunes reviews, and we're glad to be able to give a little love back to the community, and keep commenting. And there's not always a promise of keys out there, but we still want you to comment, and we still want you to leave reviews and subscribe and do all that good stuff. So again, this has been episode 54 of VR Roundtable, and we will see you next week.
Thanks for watching. Bye.
Bye.